Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Shifters podcast. I am joined by Anushka, founder of Aamchi, and she is here to talk to us about Tanki. Congratulations, firstly, Anushka, for being one of the winners of our open competition for the Global Innovation Challenge 2023. How did you feel when you found out?
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I felt really happy when I found out. I'm sure, like everyone else, I wasn't expecting to actually hear back because it was very early in the morning when I actually gave my interview in Boston, and I did not deliver as I expected. And but I was sort of optimistic, and so when I heard back, I was in a class, and I kind of like jumped with joy when I received the email, and I'm really excited to actually, with this kickstart on the ground again, and really go back to the community and work to actually then work to the next leg of our project. So I'm really looking forward to what this has to bring for us in the organization. So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, that's amazing. And again, congratulations to you and the team. I can imagine, like you said, you in class sitting there excited.
Yeah.
You sent an email that is so cool. Anushka, have you always been an entrepreneur? Like, what's your origin story? Like, if you're a superhero, what's your first comic book about? Like, what were you raised? How did you start? Were you always entrepreneurial?
That's actually a very good question. I don't know if I was always entrepreneurial, but something that I knew about myself was this was sort of very personal to me. And I liked solving problems was because I sort of grew up in a Sindhi refugee colony in Ulhasnagar. And Ulhas means the river Ulhas, where this community is located. And Nagar means the city. So the city is sort of located in the Ulhas River on the western coast of India. And the coastal suburbs sort of confronts a growing, onslaught of climate-induced challenges, which also includes urban heat island effect and increased monsoon flooding. And despite this risk, sort of our city remained underserved by the local governments, lacking access to infrastructure for clean water and sanitation and hygiene. And this sort of very early on prompted my interest in sort of building with communities to mitigate the effects of climate change and improve access to infrastructure. So I remember in 2019 when I founded Aamchi, soon after I graduated with a degree in architecture. I also remember that at that time, most of my fellow batchmates were sort of, they went the conventional route of practicing architecture, making big buildings, designing luxury homes. And I sort of didn't know what to do because I didn't feel a calling for that. I sort of felt that my calling was somewhere else. And so I was very interested in deploying my architecture and design skills to improve the issues that my community faced. And so I was sort of invested in the whole idea of problem solving for the next 6 months. And the primary issue that I was sort of really looking at hand was the issue of access to flooding and water precisely. And like they say, sort of the power of community engagement and the power of stakeholder engagement is sort of was my sheer learning in that whole process of 6 months, because when we were sort of really looking at the issue of water, we realized how intrexibly the issue of sanitation is related with the issue of water.
Yeah.
So we sort of tried to combine in the next course of 6 months after doing our engagement process of trying to look at how we can solve all these issues of water, flooding, and sanitation together. So I think that's how my entrepreneur story sort of emerged. I never was sort of actively seeking to become like a social entrepreneur, but really looking at how I can deploy my existing skills of an architect and design skills to really solve these issues, because that was something that I was truly passionate about. And that sort of in its own course of time developed into what I'm sort of doing right now with Aamchi.
An amazing origin story, and there's a lot there, and you're obviously very talented, very skilled, and very hardworking because to be studying architecture, which if anything, I'm not sure how long your course was, but I know it's
5 years of
years. I was
5 years,
gonna say it's
sleep
very long.
nights. Yes.
There's a very
Yeah.
long, a lot of
Yeah.
work going in there, and to do
Yeah.
that, that's incredible. How would you summarize what Amchi does?
So like I sort of alluded to it earlier, the original idea was sort of really looking at making my community resilient and sort of safe. And this is like a broader issue, which is not common to just my own community, but a global phenomenon where like around, say, 3 billion people
Mm.
globally experience severe flooding events.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, there is like another like 2.5 billion people who have access to like no water, right? So it was sort of really trying to understand how the issue of like, say, for instance, at one side, there is so much flooding, and on the other side, there are people who don't have access to water. So how can you sort of really combine this issue? And so when we were sort of really looking at the whole process of like actually deploying this whole solution of really harvesting rainwater to provide access to water, because it's a form of fresh water, right? And is when we realized that the communities that we were working with didn't have toilets, right? So even if they had water, they were sort of not living a dignified life. So I was still not able to sort of completely claim that this community is sort of completely resilient because it did not have enough toilets. So, I mean, by toilets, I mean like the entire settlement of 5,000 people were just using one community toilet. So it was the toilet seat ratio of around 90 people for one toilet seat, right?
Wow.
And these are sort of like the poorest of the poor people who don't sort of have access to even permanent housing, which means like the civic body cannot provide these services here. They cannot provide access to water and clean sanitation. And also the other issue was that the slum dwellers sort of here pay less than like, like, I mean, sort of more than $1 to actually use these common facilities. And that sort of in a way generates a revenue of over 50 billion for the municipality. And yet these services are like never really maintained. So what Tanki was sort of trying to do was incorporate like a robust wash ecosystem. By wash, I mean water and sanitation and hygiene, to protect the communities with limited access to water and sanitation through like a four intervention approach, which sort of focuses on repurposing the existing infrastructure, because there is no place to build more infrastructure. Most of these settlements live in very high density and are crowded. And as a result, land is a very, very important resource here. And it's sort of also very limited. And so it really is are focused around repurposing the physical sanitation infrastructure and simultaneously also building local capacity, community capacity for dignified sanitation, along with influencing sanitation behavior and building wash literacy for these communities. So it's like a four intervention led process that really sort of tackles the issue of water and sanitation. And it does that by incorporating an IoT enabled, which is Internet of Things enabled technology that sort of is also constantly monitoring and evaluating the existing services in place so that it is in a state where these communities can actually use them.
That's so incredible, and there's so much amazing stuff happening in there. And it's, yeah, I loved even the way the language you're using in terms of like dignified sanitation and all these, like, there's all of the, like, it's really, I can see there's a massive focus on the person, the humans, the people. Um, Very empathetic, very emotionally intelligent, like, organization. So how many of you are in the team?
So it started with me alone. And then I was joined by one of my juniors in college, because like I told you, this is when I started sort of really thinking about this issue. And Shreya Nachne, who is also studying with me, is also an architect who lives very close around. And so I sort of reached out to her because I realized that setting up an organization is not a one man's job. It really, really needs a lot of people to come together and do something. Although if you have an idea and you have the passion, you still need people to come together and deliver. And so it really started with Shreya and I together to sort of really go to like the local government, really meet them and really talk to them about we want to like I remember the first meeting with the local corporator. We went to in his office and he's like, you two little girls, why do you want to change the world? Like you have a degree in architecture, just go make money. Why do you want to enter a slum? It's so bad. And we were just like, we want to do this. We really want to design this. And his response was that, you come and you design, and when you go, it's just people are not going to use it and they're not going to maintain it. So there is no point of investment. These people like to live like this. And our immediate response was like, have you ever tried to work with them? Like, we really feel that the change is a possibility only when you want to create change, right? So if you don't create a possibility of doing and it's sort of really based on your own assumptions, then there is no change that's ever going to occur. And as a result, when I was sort of really talking about our 4-step intervention, there was a lot of emphasis on sanitation behavior and that sort of also requires a long-term engagement process. So for the next entire year, we sort of really spent all our energy and time and going to the community every day and sort of just talking to them, just getting familiarized, showing our faces every day, even if we didn't have, something concrete to show to them, just talking to them and just making them comfortable with our presence there was like the key thing that we did for an entire year almost. And that sort of really helped us also establish the trust with community, because it's pivotal. If you're an outsider just going to tell them that, hey, this thing is going to change your life forever, no one's going to buy it. Like, why would they just like believe in you? You're an outsider, right? So we did a lot of like bunch of community-led workshops with them, which was also very, very important for them to sort of spend time with us. And was a huge resource for us because, for them to spend 2 hours with you is a daily wage for them. Like they work
Yeah.
on basis of daily wage, and they're spending 2 hours with you means that they are willing to trust you with what you have to do. And so that from there were few more volunteers who joined us, and another architect who joined us in the whole process of actually building construction of the decentralized water system that was attached to the toilet. And that's how like our team grew. And in the whole process, there were a lot of people and volunteers who joined us, a lot of community-based organizations that joined us, came with us, working on the issues of menstrual health, hygiene, access to women's health and toilets, and a lot of government-based organizations and politicians also joined us in the process. We were on TV for a very long time. There were local corporators and reporters who wanted to talk to us about the whole process and the whole journey. So it was sort of very, very thrilling in that sense.
That's so cool. So you're
Yeah.
famous.
For short-lived,
Yeah.
yeah, short fame, yeah.
So whereabouts are you in the team like base, like your headquarters?
So the team sort of now in a transient state, with me sort of currently studying in MIT, Boston. I'm sort of placed there, and the entire team is sort of located in Mumbai. And so I come here, which is why I spend all my summer and winter breaks in India, because that's the only way through which I can keep in constant touch with what's happening on the ground. And so that's how I'm sort of really navigating between the two worlds right now. So it's like a transient team, semi-based in Boston and between India.
So you're must have an incredible work rate and work because if you're still
Yeah.
studying in MIT, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
And you've got all of this going on with Aamchi. Like, what are you studying, by the way, at MIT?
I'm studying urban and regional planning right now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
After doing your architecture.
Yeah. 2 more years of
Mm,
study. Yeah.
yeah, wow. Yeah. Your family must be very proud of you.
Um, yeah, I think they are, of course. My mom is always very happy of from where I started to where I am right now. But I feel like I'm in the whole ecosystem of MIT. I'm surrounded by so many people doing so many incredible things that I never actually give enough credit to what I'm doing and how I'm doing, because there's so much of inspiration to take from, and I'm actually very, very fortunate to that sort of exposure that I'm gaining there. And it's I think it's only when you sit and talk about it is when you realize that, oh, we've done so much to actually get there. And I before talking to you, I haven't had that time of pause ever since I like left home to actually go to the US. It was my first time also of stepping outside home for such a long time, being away from family for so long. And so it has been sort of a great learning experience for me, and also for Amchi to sort of really be able to connect with, I think, so many international organizations like Social Shifters, like the PKG, the World Around Network. I feel those kind of like organizations and exposure only came to me after I sort of left India, because that was sort of very pivotal in the whole trajectory of Amchi as well.
No, that's very cool. And I think like that's why I'm asked some of these questions. Because sometimes we, like you said, we don't necessarily stop and like look back or take stock of like how far you've come, but you that's doing so much and you've done so much already. So you mentioned earlier about when you and your friend you went to the office with
Yeah.
the school council, and he said like two little girls, like why are you trying to change the world? Where did that self-belief come from within you, like your belief in yourself to keep going, irrespective of the hurdles and hearing comments like that, and all the different challenges you faced?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a very, very interesting question. I think it wasn't there initially, if I can be completely honest. And so when we sort of heard his resentment, our immediate response was to actually like ourselves go and check in the communities, like, do they actually trust us? Do they actually want us? Do they actually believe in us? And I think three of our interactions in the very first month itself made us realize that these people really want to change. Like, who wants to live like that? Like, who doesn't want access to clean sanitation? Who doesn't want access to water? Everyone wants a change, but it's just that when you are, dogmented by such a hard life where, your every day is just focused on making money, because you come from such a marginalized section of the society where you can't afford to fight for your own rights, because that sort of requires time and capacity which you cannot afford to give. And if there is, and which is why it's also the role of civil society is so important in the society, because they are a voice to the marginalized, right, in a way where they're establishing their needs to the technocratic world, which wouldn't have happened. I mean, would have happened definitely. There is a strength in people's voice. There is a strength in sort of people's protest, but there is also added strength when there are people that come from a technical or a civil society background to really put out your interests and demands to the people who are in charge of taking these decisions, right? So that's when we realized that there is definitely a strength in sort of combining our knowledge and our strengths with what the community actually needs. And their trust sort of made us trust in our own self. And I remember our very first meeting after that with the local corporator was, in fact, I can share those pictures with you after so that you can put it in and you
Hi.
can cut this part off. But it was actually us presenting in front of the community in presence of all the local corporators, and the community members really voicing out what they want is when they also like sort of realize that it's not just these two girls saying whatever the hell they want in the world. It's actually they're sort of really doing the work and sort of really materializing what the needs are on the ground. And there is a possibility and a very practical possibility of making this change. It was actually a very, very simple change, right? And so that's how it sort of materialized us into getting the local contractor to work with us and getting the contract, and then sort of developing those funds, because we didn't have any funds. And so the whole idea was to convince him to deploy funds into this community so that we can actually build the whole setup with the community themselves. So it was a very interesting sort of experience to get money from a local corporator who doesn't believe in us, and then sort of have the whole community come together and then convince him to actually invest in the project. So it was a very interesting learning experience for me too.
That's incredible. Like
Yeah,
that segment. And I like when you said like when you speak about the community believing in you helped you yourself to believe in yourself. Like them
yeah,
believing in us helped you believe in us. So that's really,
exactly.
really, really powerful and profound.
Yeah.
So you've had to overcome a lot of hurdles, a lot of challenges. So out of those challenges, would what would you say is the biggest challenge? I feel like you may have alluded to it just a moment ago towards the end.
I feel like the biggest challenge for me somewhere was also like sort of being a woman entrepreneur. Like, I mean, I still don't consider myself an entrepreneur, but to say to say that a social entrepreneur maybe is the right word. And so I feel that was like the biggest issue to be in a space which is completely dominated by male presence. I also sort of working in India, which is a deeply patriarchal society. For men to sort of see you take charge is sort of a very, very weird status quo, right? Like, and third person who joined us was a male figure. So automatically people would sort of reach out to him and ask for his response to things. And I was sort of in many situations would also feel like sidelined because
Mm,
people don't want to see you as a important figure because you're a woman, right? And the way I sort of really tried to work through this was really work with a lot of women and really create change agents as women, because I feel if in a society, in the own community, if men are able to see their own women sort of rise and take charge and take
yeah.
position, it's when they can see like other women in position of a leadership role, right? Is when they can be comfortable. So when we did like series of interviews and a series of workshops, we created girls who are college goers as change agents, as leadership roles where they had, the like the position to really connect with us and really talk to the local corporator and really tell him what are the issues that they are facing in their own communities and raise their own voice, and then sort of also get to know about their own rights, because access to clean water and sanitation is your right. So if you don't really get that, where do you report it? How do you report it? And slowly and steadily, when like they sort of tried to see that there was some change occurring in the community and there was water in the toilet, is when they actually believed in us. And when they actually started to see those changes, is when they got comfortable with, sort of us being in that sort of dominant role. Not, I mean, that was not my intention, sort of to be in that dominant role, but to just be in a situation where people actually listen to you,
Mm.
sort of really are willing to work with you. And it was a very slow process, but I think that was my biggest challenge to overcome. And it was also a very complicated one to overcome because of all the dynamicities that do exist within our society.
Applause to all of those barriers that you've overcome. And I think like what have you learned from that experience of everything you just spoke about being a woman and all of everything you have to overcome in your journey so far? Like what have you learned from that massive challenge that you're overcoming?
One of the biggest sort of learning has been that at the heart of the whole process of community engagement really was that I think was the process of really trusting yourself, really deploying our solution in the very early phase is what we really did. And I think I learned that it was important for us to not be afraid of really testing what we had in our idea, in what we were thinking, because when you are thinking in your own head, that idea is still an idea, and it's only when you actually implement on ground you realize its practicality, its adaptability, its potential, right? So even our whole idea of sort of really working firstly on the issue of access to water and how that sort of really came into the whole gotten the whole nuance of actually combining the whole process of tackling the issue of sanitation, flooding, and water together. It's like hitting three shots with like one arrow sort of. And that was like sort of my biggest learning. And also the second learning was to actually listen to the people that we were sort of trying to serve, because that is so important. And I think the feedback process of really being with the community, spending a lot of time was crucial, not only for the betterment of our own project, but also for from an ethical standpoint, right? Because the people who you are serving, they are the ones who should have complete decision-making capacity to decide what they really want from it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was my two biggest learnings from the whole process.
So that's yeah,
Yeah.
that makes total sense. And that believe in yourself, and coming back to your self-belief as a theme that's coming up, and almost building those case studies. There's examples you can look back at. Okay, we've done that. That gives a bit more
Exactly.
self-belief. I've done that, and self-belief, and their belief in
Exactly.
us now. Self say it's like
Exactly.
layer by layer. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So like all of the incredible things you're doing now and so far, what's your vision for Aamchi? Like, where do you want to take this? What's your grand vision?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's I tend to think about it quite often now, because I'll be graduating in May, and I really want to think about where we are going with this. And I think the the solution itself is sort of very, very easy to replicate, right? It sort of costs less than $1 to sort of positively impact one family, while also we focus on deploying like local community and building this technology. So the obvious response to this is sort of really scale this up to a lot of communities who are facing these similar challenges. And in the past, we've also sort of partnered, like I said, with institutions like the UN World Summit, the WSA, the United Nations, the Meta, Open Arts,
Wow.
and also the PKG Institute at MIT, which has given us sort of an international recognition to sort of really try and use and materialize that recognition to create this change within not only in India, but also in communities in the global South region that are facing similar issues in, say, Africa, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and really try and learn from those different, you know, uh, ecosystems of what they are doing in terms of tackling issues of wash delivery, and what can be learned to sort of improve the forthcoming leg of Aamchi. While also the larger vision, I would say, with this is that it's sort of, like I've already alluded to it, it sort of also lies in I think reckoning with the deeply contested, fractured cities in global south. As I've sort of really mentioned, land is such a disputed issue within our cities, and the whole issue of infrastructure, services, population density, coupled with poverty, is a very big issue. So as a part of this whole journey that we've sort of been on for the last, I think, 4.5 or 5 years, I'm really looking at how we can also influence global policy for sort of increasing government accountability, citizen and civil societies to actually rethink the design of informal settlements. How can we actually think through participatory mechanisms to really transform these informal settlements into livable habitats, and also successfully integrate them within the urban fabric of these cities, right? So these are like the long-term issues that I'm sort of really like moving towards in terms of yeah, where Aamchi has to go.
Very grand vision. I'm excited to watch
Yeah,
the story.
yeah.
And so if you could go back to before you started Amchi and speak to your younger self, your former self, what one piece of advice would you give to your younger self before starting Amchi?
Um, I think the same thing that I sort of alluded to earlier in terms of my learning would be that sort of really prioritizing the understanding and the perspectives of the communities that I was sort of really trying to serve. And I mean, I wouldn't want to change anything from what I did, because it was a very non-linear journey that I had sort of really being really passionate and driven about something and going after it, realizing that, oh, maybe this doesn't work and maybe this needs to work like in such a form, and then sort of really talking with the community and then sort of really identifying what the community needs and then sort of trying to work at different levels of bureaucracy, technocracy, and also community engagement and the own politics of community engagement. So I think it was a very long process and it was a very non-linear journey. And if I have to change something, I wouldn't want to change anything. But maybe what I would want to do better perhaps would be to really, no, actually, I wouldn't want to change anything.
I love that. Committed. Okay. So for
Yeah.
anyone who's been deeply inspired as I have by listening to your story and what I think you've done so far and you're planning and continuing to do, where can we find you online to follow your journey?
Definitely. I have an Instagram page at Aamchi. It's underscore Aamchi, AAMCHI. You can follow that to keep following us in terms of what we have been doing on ground. We're going to be starting, like I already mentioned, the second leg of our project through the support of social shifters in maybe mid-year. And so yeah, do follow us, and we keep the page pretty active. So yeah.
So yeah, we'll put all the links in the description and so forth. And if is there any way people can support if they want to go beyond following you on social? Is there any way we can get involved?
Definitely, definitely. You can write to me on the Instagram page, or I can also share my Amchi's email ID, and people can definitely get in touch with us. People who live in India who are listening to this can definitely get in touch with us and help us volunteer with us to sort of reach to more people and sort of really try and implement this in different parts of India. And I'd be happy to sort of chat with them.
Amazing, love that. And lastly, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd want to speak about?
I think one advice that I would give to emerging entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs would definitely be that trust in yourself. I would say before you put anything out there, really try and test your ideas, because that is so important for you to establish that trust in yourself and your own capability. And I think a lot of people just get excited and thrilled about the ideas that they have in their mind, but often are not so excited about actual implementation. So I think my only advice would just be to, be excited about the implementation as much as you are excited about having that idea and that kickstart, because that's when the actual work really starts, right? So yeah, and good luck for all the people listening to this. And if they ever want to reach out and want to chat with me, I am available by email, and I can share my email address with you.
Oh, that's been incredible, Anushka. That advice was gold, and I started smiling when you said, when you can get excited about the ideas and maybe not
Yeah,
be excited about the implementation, be as excited about the implementation as the ideas. Love
yeah,
that. Amazing advice. That could apply in
yeah,
so many different areas of life.
yeah.
No, thank you so much, Anushka, for sharing your story and for Aamchi, and super excited to carry on and watching what you guys are doing because you're doing some incredible work and very privileged to spend this time. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and thank you for all your encouraging words. And it was a really nice chat. And yeah, thank you for having me.
If you want to learn more about social shifters and how we can help you to impact the social or environmental issues that matter to you most, subscribe to our YouTube channel or find us on Instagram and Spotify.